the book has its heart in the right place. So, do you agree to that?
As a writer, I always want to believe that his heart is the right place, both literally as well as
Right.
otherwise.
Right. So, did you ever had in mind that कि यार मैं ये book तो लिख रहा हूँ, it could have backlash?
One part will really accept it, but there will be a strong other part which will completely try to throw it out of window.
Our history or our heroes of that era have not been shown, and what exactly is shown in the textbooks?
We are the only civilization which is, I'm talking from the ancient world, which is not in the museum. All others are in the museum, whether it's Egyptian, Roman, Greeks, Persian. It's time that we stopped aping or writing history just from the Delhi center. Delhi is the center of it. This was very spontaneous, and it just weaved. It went about its own. It took its own course, I can say. So I
Thank you so
loved
much.
it. So thank you so much for inviting
Thank
me.
you so much, Utpal Ji. Utpal Ji, welcome to the iRonik show.
Thank you so much.
Sir, interesting book. Interesting. I mean, the heading of the book, the name of the book is really interesting. Eminent Distorians. We'll come to that. You have spoken about your book in a lot of podcasts. So before we, talk about the book, I just wanted to understand the person writing this book. I mean, which is obviously you. But what was the thought process? So did you ever had in mind that कि यार मैं ये book तो लिख रहा हूँ, it could have backlash or it could, because I'm challenging what
I,
is already there.
No, true. And in fact, I knew that this backlash will be there. The challenge will be there. I'm part of the kind of the system where I'm the part of mainstream media. So I know that how media operates, how academia operates. I've been very closely connected with that. So I knew that that book will be will have very mixed reaction. One part will really accept it, but there will be a strong other part which will completely try to throw it out of window, saying that this is nothing. This is just bunkum. So I knew that I was quite prepared for that. But but I've never cared about in my life like that. If you have ever followed my journey as a journalist also, like I've been working for the last 2 decades. I generally write what I believe is right, and generally my views are slightly not really and ephemeral to the established notions of the ideological this thing the established notion of ideology. So generally, I take a position which is slightly contrarian, and so I maybe I kind of enjoy that positioning also. So, but yeah, coming to the book, I think this book was. I always knew that I'm going to write something on history.
Okay.
And I was not sure about this nature of it, that it will be like
Right.
Eminent Distorians, but I was always sure that something on history, something on looking at this distortions there. It was always in my mind. Last 3 decades, all I have done mostly is I've read history. Even in politics, I've read political history of things. So
Right.
history was always in the background of my studies and my writing and everything. So I think I really expected it, and I'm glad that it happened.
So just for the audience, I'm putting the book on the screen. So this is what I have with me, Eminent Distorians by Utpal Kumar. Okay. Now, one thing that I have, found common, I've spoken to the likes of Abhas Maldahiyar, Chandrachur Ghosh. So there has been typically one notion that the history, the actual history of India or the Bharat that we call, has been modified to suit the likes of the people who were in power at that point of time. Right?
Absolutely.
Why that happened? And why this sudden hue and cry about changing everything? For example, let me. So while I was talking to Chandrachurda, right? So obviously he is a historian and he has done so much work regarding Subhash Chandra Bose. And if you pick up a textbook, things are obviously changing. But if you had when we were young, we were in school, until till date, I believe. I mean, if you pick up our textbooks, how much of it is there about Subhash Chandra Bose?
Nothing. In NCRT, in fact, I did a kind of research article when I was in India Today, Mail Today. and I found that there were just a couple of lines about him. That's it, and that also
Yeah.
are not very unsavory in the nature. They're not really, truly, presenting in a very good light per se. So hardly. I mean, and that's the unfortunate part. That our freedom movement, for instance, has been just
Hmm.
about Gandhi and Gandhians. Now, I don't have a problem with Gandhi. Our Gandhians, they played their role, and let's be honest about
Hmm.
it.
Absolutely.
Yesterday was Savarkar's death anniversary. I wrote an article, and my headline was that yes, Gandhi and Gandhi is very important, but so were Subhash Bose and Savarkar. So
Absolutely.
my point is, we need to really democratize our freedom struggle saga. We need to we need to have many more pantheons there. We need to have many more heroes there.
Hmm.
And this was not just about Gandhi. And in fact, I'll go a step further and say that in fact Gandhi and his role was not the most important. Also,
Hmm.
it was actually the role of revolutionary that was most important. So while not denying the role of Gandhi, I'm saying that Gandhi was there. He was important. But I think we need to be very honest about our history and historiography and go back and go to the original sources and again recheck it and reevaluate the role of our entire freedom struggle, freedom fighters. But my view is that revolutionary have played a stellar role, and
Absolutely.
without them, I don't think India was any closer to independence.
And why do you think this happened? That they were deliberately
Yeah.
left out of history?
Yes. Yeah. That's a very important question. In fact, you asked previously also. See, I honestly believe that any political party,
Hmm.
and here I'll be slightly more generous to Nehru and Indira,
Hmm.
any political party which is in power will want to have history written from its perspective. It want to
Hmm.
be very sympathetic history.
Hmm.
So here, there's nothing unusual. That's a very normal course of action. But history and politics, unfortunately, go together.
Hmm.
Uh, but I believe that there has some Lakshman Rekha has to be created where you don't cross it and don't create a complete hagiography and don't completely throw out or marginalize the role of say what happened with Subhash Bose or Bhagat Singh or many other revolutionaries.
Yeah.
In fact, these two have got some mention. There are many who are not even mentioned in the footholds
Absolutely.
also. So,
Absolutely.
like Sachin Sanyal, he went to Kalapani twice, and had he not written his book, Bandi Jeevan, maybe we wouldn't have known about the kind of work he did. And so, my point is that but history is about that, and that's one of the problems with history, that it will always be politicized. But the way it was politicized in 50s and especially in 60s, that was unprecedented. I mean, every political party does that, but that was, I think,
Hmm.
that was a phase when every alternate voice, every differing voice was completely shunted out. They were gagged. They were thrown out of this ecosystem, and it was just one ideology, one kind of view, which were allowed to prosper or to grow their roots. So that was unfortunate, and that happened especially in the 60s when
Hmm.
Indira Gandhi's government was in minority and they needed the support of communists. And as a bargain, she had to give all intellectual, academic, as well as cultural institutions to the leftists, who in fact within a couple of years, within 4 or 5 years, they completely filled the entire institution with their own card holding cadres or activists. And in fact, the contemporary sources which I have quoted in my book also, they
Hmm.
suggest that while getting them inside all these institutions, uh, uh, the only criteria that was followed was that they should be communist and no other
Hmm.
criteria.
Hmm.
They were not even required to be competent enough academically or intellectually. So that was the
Okay.
state of affair, and that was unfortunate.
So I was actually reading the forewords written by various several scholars and authors and everyone. So one thing that caught my attention was something written by Subhash Kak. So he has mentioned that the book has its heart in the right place. So do you agree to that? And what how would what
Uh,
would you respond to that?
See, as a writer, I always want to believe that his heart is the right place, both literally as well as
Right. Right.
otherwise.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I think it's for the readers
Hmm.
to decide that. But I generally believe I have slightly advantage in the vantage point. I started my serious focused study of history from 1995 onwards. And first few years, the first 5 to 6 years, I thoroughly studies what communist historians like Romila Thapar, D.N. Jha, and all these people had written. So I first went through their literature. So it's not that I have
Hmm.
completely cut out. And in
Right.
fact, you can find out. I've also quite extensively quoted them in my books. So and after that, I went to these views which started,
Hmm.
challenging them. Those alternate viewpoints. So I had the advantage of both viewpoints, and when I read both views, I kind of came to the conclusion that that communist historiography was absolutely many times a kind of the activist viewpoint and not the historian's viewpoint, where
Hmm.
they kind
Hmm.
of reach the conclusion beforehand head, and then try to look for the evidences to suit that the analysis. And whether that was either invasion theory, or whether it was, Soka was great or not great, or whether the role of Gandhi in our independence movement,
Hmm.
or even, whether, was India, this country, just about invasion and invaders, and it doesn't
Hmm.
have anything of its own to showcase. So when I looked at the totality, I found that in the role of our historians, eminent historians, quote unquote, was absolutely very disturbing, and that's why I thought that it's time that we should stop calling them historians. What they did was distorting the history of India, and they deserve to be called
Right.
historians.
Okay. Funny that you mentioned Romila Thapaji's name. So you have mentioned, I mean, the eminent historian and the eminent historian part of it. Why do you think that they were the historians? I mean, they were the Distorians and not historians.
See what happened when India got independence in
Huh.
1947. So there were efforts. There were quite a few genuinely eminent historians, like Asim Andar and Jagannath Sarkar. There were quite a few, many more than that,
Hmm.
and they were genuinely believed in a historiography where
Hmm.
facts were sacrosanct. Facts, they always believe that facts should never be played with,
Hmm.
or should
Hmm.
not be hidden just because it didn't suit the narrative, political or the social narrative of the time. Because fact, history has to be told as it is.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
history is there not just for the as a chronicle of the past, but from history, we also learn how to live today and prepare for the future. So it has its importance. What happened in the 50s? Jawaharlal Nehruji had a soft corner for communism. I don't blame him either, because that was also the era when most of us,
Yeah.
most of our fathers and for our grandfathers, they also thought so. They, there was an
Hmm.
aura
Hmm.
with communism that
Yeah.
something is for the greater good, or is good for the humanity. And it took almost like 30 to 40 years, I think, till that when
Hmm.
Berlin Wall fell. Then actually this bubble was busted that no, this is not good for most people, I'm saying. So at least I can give Nehru that benefit of doubt. But the problem happened but because of that, the kind of people got sucked into this, the social sciences, the field of social sciences, where mostly people who were leftists in their leaning.
Hmm.
Now, the problem with communism is that anybody who professes communism, his first loyalty is towards the ideology.
Hmm.
So he's first a communist, and we have to really understand that. That even if he is a historian, his first loyalty won't be to the history or history writing, but to the ideology he believes, and that's communism. So most of these people were communists, and what they did, like a true communist, they first their loyalty they showed was their ideology, and their ideology. See, what is a communist ideology? Communist ideology is very simple. You read the literature, they say their goal is to capture power. In howsoever and whatever they have to do, they will do. Their entire goal is to just achieve power and then go for whatever
Hmm.
changes they want to do through violent manner and everything. Now, these historians wrote their books precisely with this objective in mind, that this had to change. And what they found, the biggest obstacle they found in their endeavor was the Sanatan tradition, the civilizational tradition which this country had, and they were very strong. And see, you have to see this country. Any big movement has ever happened in this country, ever, I'm saying, it could only succeed when it has slightly, the spiritual, religious uh, connotation to that. Gandhi, for instance, invoked
Yeah.
Ram and Gita and did bhajan. So we always had that, and the success, because you can you can unite people of this country through that spiritual kind of the
Spiritual
dhaga
thread.
hota hai. Yeah,
Huh.
yes. So that is something which communists really abhor. They really hate that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So for them, if they want to bring in communism here, the biggest obstacle is the civilizational moorings, the civilizational idea of Bharat. So their history was kind of antithesis to that. They started writing history when Hinduism, for example, Sanatana was seen was shown as things repository of everything bad, everything backward, everything violent, and nothing was good there. This country was, since it owes its origin to Sanatan tradition, was shown as a place where nobody lived. Everyone came from outside. So Aryans came from outsides, and then anything good could happen here. When Mughal came, then they came from outside, and then when Mughal Empire came here, British came, and that's why British could give it. So everything came from outside. This country had nothing original of its own. So that was, and unfortunately, when you go through our literature, go through our history, go through our archaeology, you find that this is nothing but absolute lie. It's a myth created just because they wanted to propagate their or push forward their leftist ideology. So this is why they kind of they created their history in such a manner where that everything good about the country was kind of hidden or concealed, and everything bad which had happened, they were kind of glorified, or any violence committed, they tried, or by other side, they tried to cover it or conceal it. So yeah, it was more political and ideological rather than historical.
Okay. So you mentioned something about that if for a country like India, you have to unite the people. So spirituality is one thread, religion is one thread that you can be used, and is a right way to go ahead about it.
And here I should put a rider. When I say religion, see, it's not a religion in the Western
Right.
frame. Our religion, meaning of religion, our dharma is absolutely different from the Western concept. Our dharma is more unifying. In West, religion and secularism are very can be very a term which really divide people.
Right.
Here it's not the case, and that's why you see the secularism when it was when Constituent Assembly were deciding about the constitution of this country. They decided not to even put the word secularism in the original constitution, and it came actually were inserted at a time when the constitution was under abeyance during emergency. So I'm saying that this entire we have to also see some of the terms we use. You have to see that we are using a Western term, but it actually, I'm using just for the sake of it, because I have to explain it in a way. But in a dharmic tradition, in Bharat tradition, its meaning is absolutely different from how we use in the West.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so talking about, let's delve a bit more into this spiritual conversation that we are having. So one thing that you said, right? Yes. So when British came and ruled us, right? So our traditions, our spiritual religious traditions or the rituals that were performed, those were marked as, typically everything was marked as black magic.
Yes.
Right. So from being practiced, those rituals being practiced. So speaking about Tantra, why Tantra has been hidden for so long, and it's such a beautiful, practice, religious practice. It was hidden because of the Mughals, because they thought, sorry, because of the British, because they thought this is some kind of black magic. This is nothing that a cultural, cultured, so-called cultured society should do. So everything went underground, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they brought in their own practices. What exactly happened during that era? Why everything regarding our culture, regarding our religion, all the practices were hidden, got hidden, and people, even Indians, why did not they could not fight it back then?
See, it's slightly, this evolution is slightly interesting. It's not very unilinear in that way. When British or Europeans for the first time when they came to this country in the time of during the Mughals, and when British ambassador came and Jahangir was there, the emperor of Bharat. At that time, Britain was a third power. And Mughals at that time were not even interested in doing anything with them. They said, "You up, what are you going to give us? We have everything. We don't need anything." So initially, what British used to do, they used to give. For instance, they were very sharp people. They realized that that Jahangir has the weakness or appetite for unique things, wines and those kind of things, or interesting, perfumes. So they started getting those kind of things, and those are kind of used like bribe. So they will get nice sets of wine from West, really good, and present it to emperor. So that's how they started. So, but initially, for the first 100 years or so, British saw Bharat in a very positive light. You see the journey. So it's journey where they started aping or imitating the nobility of this country. And when you read the work of William Dalrymple, White Mughal or the late Mughals, you find that many of these British high class officials, they used to behave like the typical Nawabs. They will have many wives, 10, 12 wives, or wife and concubines, and those kind of things. Many women, many children. They will behave and sit like the Nawab sit in the ground and with a lot of big pillows and everything, and hear all the dances and mujras. So that was the case for first 100 years. In fact, the, we used to look down upon as very dirty people, and you may laugh at it today, but as simple a thing like taking bath every day was taught to them by our women. The women who came to their household, they actually taught them that they need to take bath every day, and they need to use soaps and those kind of things. So they were extremely dirty, and very I may use in today's way, not very civilized people in that way. But look at the journey. Within 100 years, things just turned around. And they realized after 100 years, when they also become won quite a few territories, including Bengal and other places, then they realized that they need to change their outlook. They can't be seeing India as a place of wow, wonderland. Because if that is the case, if India is so great and advanced, then what is the rationale of British coming then and ruling the place? And then it was the afterthought when they started changing the narrative. They started translating our books in such a way. They started. There was also a big struggle between Sanskritists and the people, proponents of people who wanted English as the language of our education. Ultimately, in 1835, those who wanted English won. And at that time you realize that everything good about the country was kind of deliberately thrown out of the window. Everything India had was bad, and the soul and caste was bad. Hinduism is nothing but caste system where people just kill each other in the name of their caste status and everything. Women are not given their due. Sati is there. All these were afterthought, and most of them. And I'm saying with a lot of responsibility. Most of them were just deliberately exaggerated. Deliberately, they were shown as something out of proportion, including Sati, for instance. It was very it was happening, no doubt, but it was happening on a voluntary level, mostly, and it was a very rare phenomena. Where in a household, if there are three wives, one would commit sati and two will not commit sati, and they were generally, in society or family would try to tell that women not to do that, and that has been the case. But the way Benting and the type ecosystem came together and created a situation where sati was made a kind of thing where the entire society is anti-women. They want to burn the woman just because her husband is no more. That was not the case. So it was largely an afterthought, colonial afterthought as I call it, where they thought that they need to now project India as a land of backward people, uncivilized people, barbarians, because British have come to civilize them. So they gave themselves this role on their own. They gave themselves a role that we are here to civilize you, and that's why the literature was written like that. That's why history was written like that. And frankly speaking, I don't have any problem with the colonial historiography. They did what was good for them. I'm more critical of my own brown sahibs and brown historians who, after independence, followed the same path and in fact took it to a different level. So when like British, for instance, kind of weaponized caste system, they were doing it what was good for them. But they were British at the end of the day. When our people took it and forget weaponizing, took it to ultimately disastrous new level. Look how caste system is today institutionalized. It's institutionalized so badly that no political party can now even dare to say a word about it. They are now into that, and the moment they use a word, which may be right, but might go against the caste system. They will lose their votes. So it's kind of today's. We have taken to a different level, and that's where my problem is that.
Okay. Let's again go back to the textbooks. Now, if we read India's history as it is called, that we were first ruled by Mughals, then the Britishers came in, and so when they went out, the Gandhi and the Nehru and everything, what is today, what it is today. Could you help us understand the exact scenario? I mean, it was there were some great Indian kingdoms, right? And we had fought against the mightiest of the armies, and we have come out stronger of. Why our history or our heroes of that era have not been shown, and what exactly is shown in the textbooks?
Ronik, I'll tell you one thing. Today, if you survive as civilization,
Hmm.
it must be because we have won more wars and battles than we have lost.
Yeah.
Because we are the only civilization which is I'm talking from the ancient one, which is not in the
Hmm.
museum. All others are in museum, whether it's Egyptian, Roman, Greeks, Persian. We are the only one who's still living, and now again going towards a thriving state. Why? Because definitely we have won more wars than we have lost. Now my problem with our history is that they've shown us as people who have just lost wars. You read
Hmm.
the textbooks, history textbooks, and a number of them, including NCRTs, they will be just litany of losses, 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 and nothing else. Now the problem is that how can that be our story? Now, if for instance a textbook in Afghanistan writes it that way, or
Yeah.
Pakistan writes it that way,
Yeah. Yeah.
I can understand that those people came from there. Not even Pakistan, Afghanistan, yeah,
Right.
Samarkand, those people. No, they write. I can understand. Because, see, they came from there, so that's perspective. In India, how can that be the perspective where the losses we are talking about and the wins we are not talking about? I'll give you just a couple of examples to just
Yes,
showcase that.
please, please.
One of the biggest battles we are often told about is Battle of Tarai, where Muhammad Ghori came and defeated. In the second one, first one he lost. Ultimately, so these two we are often told about. But are we even told about a battle which Gori lost in 1170s, and that to a woman in Gujarat called Nike Devi. Nike Devi,
Yeah.
her husband has just died. He had a very young son, so she took the control of the state. And at that time, Gori thought that it's an easy target. It's a low-lying fruit, so let me just smash this kingdom. Nike Devi just fought the battle so smartly. She devised the warfare that army should be stationed here, let them come, and then we'll fight it out. Everything she did. She in fact invited many other neighboring kings also. Uh,
Hmm.
and then she gave a crushing defeat to Muhammad Ghori. And it was so crushing that next 13 years, Ghori didn't even dare to attack the mainland of this country for 13 years. Now, do we ever talk about that? Why?
No.
Why don't we talk about that? We need to talk about that. Now, I'll give another example. We are always told about, another Muslim invader. That is Bakhtiyar Khilji. Bakhtiyar Khilji not just destroyed Nalanda and another this thing in Vikamsila, but also there was a kingdom in Bengal, Senas. The dynasty was Sena dynasty.
Hmm.
This dynasty came after Palas. Pala were a very strong dynasty and rich dynasty which controlled almost most of the North India, especially Bengal and Bihar. So they succeeded Palas. So Sena dynasty, and this Bakhtiyar Khilji reached the capital of Sena dynasty, captured the palace where king was having his lunch, and he couldn't even finish it, and had to run away without his sandal also. He was the state of affairs so bad, he was completely clueless, and he reached there with just 18 soldiers. So we are told this story. Yeah, look at this. It was so easy. It was just like they came, they saw, they conquered.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
But are we ever told that what happened to Bakhtiyar Khilji afterward? No one will know. I don't think anyone because after that what happens? He goes to Assam, and Assamese king gives him such a crushing defeat, that he is killed by not by Assamese soldiers but his own soldiers. उनके अपने सोल्जर से मार देते हैं कि यार तुमने बेवकूफी किया. Why you took us this far into this
Hmm.
land? We are not told about that king, King Prithu of Assam. King Prithu should be our ideal hero. We don't talk about that. Nike Devi should be our hero. We don't talk about that. So why? Because deliberately we are not told the victories we had. Now I'm giving two examples. This is a classic example where
Yeah.
everyone mentioned that. But we are not going to talk about Nike Devi. We are not talking about King Prithu. Why? We should be. This is our history. We should be telling
Absolutely.
that. And I'm not saying
Absolutely.
that distort history. I'm not saying that invent history. That's
Hmm.
again wrong. But what is true is true. See, there are many people in the right, especially with nationalist view. They believe that we should cut down Mughal history and we should talk more about Shivaji and talk about Mahana Pratap. I'm not in that favor. I'm saying talk as much about Mughal you want to talk, but also talk about Shivaji, also talk about other people, also talk about Mewar. By not talking to them, we again will might be taking the wrong lessons of history. See, all these are our lessons. Why we lost to Mughals, why Mughals succeeded, what tactics Aurangzeb did, or what Akbar did. We all need to know because that will help us understand where we faltered at that time and what we need to
Hmm.
do. So by not reading Mughal is also not the right way. So we need to read, but we need to read everything. What happens is mostly leftists will say that they will tell us we'll just talk about Mughal the Great, and
Yeah.
some of in the right will say, no, no, please, why are you talking too much about them? Let's just talk about that. I think we need to let history be history, and let facts be sacrosanct, and then that's what has not happened in the last 70 years. Thankfully, change is happening though now.
Right. So do you think here, the movie industry wherein we are making movies like Padmavat talking about the Mewar kingdom, recently Vicky Kaushal's Chhawa is getting so
Sure.
much praise for bringing in Sambhaji's story. So do you think our movie industry uh, is doing the right thing by bringing out these stories which
See,
were
I'll be
not in the
very
mainstream?
I'll be very honest that the industry or even politicians.
Hmm.
I'm just saying, I'm very, and that's why I sometimes get more critical to the society per se, to our society leaders, community leaders, because they need to do more. They need to unite our people and push forward the agenda. Because
Hmm.
politicians at the end of the day do what will get them power and vote. Let's be sure about that. They are
Absolutely.
there for
Yeah.
power, and they're political parties. They're not here to bring out some social revolution.
Hmm.
Similarly, somebody making a film, they will make film when that kind of film will be watched by people. Why today? Why in 50s there was Mughal Azam? Well, that was kind of the situation where
Yeah.
things were created about Nehruvian this thing where that people thought, oh, this is how it is.
Hmm.
So today you create a Mughal Azam and it might bombed. It might bomb badly. Today people are ready for that kind of history where
Hmm.
see you
Hmm.
suppress. See, we have to understand one thing, that one good thing about India is that even when our Sarkari history, our mainstream history, was distorted, they were always called oral tradition. Oral history was always strong in
Right.
all the regions. Like go to Maharashtra region and Marathwada and all these places, you will find that talks the story about Shivaji and Sambhaji is still there. So that's why you can't kill. You can never kill. And that's why those people who say that that for reconciliation you should hide the truth, you can't reconciliate. You want to create a reconciliation, first you have to tell the truth, because people already know. And every people might not be knowing it, like about Sambhaji, entire world was not knowing, entire country was not
Yeah.
knowing, but those Maratha relatives, they always knew that what
Yes.
happened to
Yes.
Sambhaji, and the angst raised was always there. And this film has brought that out, and today entire country is knowing it. So this is what is happening. It's more about people awakening. It's people waking
Yeah.
up to their own reality. It's also about they now growing feeling about this pride of being a Sanatani. You are no longer apologetic about your roots. So
Yeah.
all these are happening together in last 10, 15 years. Also with social media around. I think we have to give social media its credit. It's very difficult to now to control the narrative. No one is the master of this beast. This beast
Right.
is going on its own, and it's a very organic way. This thing. It might have its repercussion. It might
Hmm.
sometime, or many times might act in a very juvenile way, a very irresponsible way. It may appear to us, but it's a very organic way, and it's under no one's control. And
Hmm.
that's why you see that now you'll get more of such things like Chhawa thing, or things which people want to hear or see. You ultimately they will make what people want to see.
Absolutely. So I would really request if you can please walk us through the Indian dynasties, the great Indian dynasties that we are typically not, we cannot typically read that in the mainstream in our textbooks, or, if you just Google search it, you won't find much references about it. So, which were those main
Uh,
dynasties in India?
See, before that, first I'll say that it's time that we also start giving our Puranas
Hmm.
a bit more respectability. Puranas, where there are a lot of dynasties. In fact, there are dynasties from Manu
Okay.
till Mauryas. There are
Ha, ha, ha.
dynasties being written with generation by generation. What our eminent historians have done, they have completely, made us believe that Puranas are nothing but, a set of superstitions.
Hmm,
It's
hmm.
nothing but lies. It's nothing but myth. Like what they also did with something
Hence the
like,
word mythology. Hence the word
yeah, it's
mythology.
mythology. It's not true. The reality is that
Hmm.
if you read it, that with how every generation is written. Like 45th generation is Bhagwan Ram comes. 94th generation there is Mahabharat war happens. You see the chronology, you start believing that it just can't be all
Yeah,
in air. There must be some truth if there
absolutely.
is such a warning about that. Uh, there are like differences in different Puranas, but this will happen. We're talking about our timeline is so long, so
Huge,
there will
huge
be
time.
differences and there might be some distortions which might be crept in. But I think we need to accept that in the same way that what happened with Manusmriti. Manusmriti in our general parlance, our general understanding is that nothing but anti-women, anti lower caste,
Hmm,
anti
hmm,
untouchables, anti Dalits. The reality is, I have read, Manusmriti. Manusmriti has some of the very most empowering lines for Shudras. Some of the most empowering lines for some of the most noble words, some of the most progressive words for women and mothers, wives. So my point is just because you find 5 lines here there, you don't need to do that.
hmm,
You are
hmm.
doing a disservice. So one is that. Second thing is that coming to other kings. So Puranas, because Puranas will be something before say Mauryas came, Nandas came. So before that, so there were. I think we need to look into that kind of historiography also. The second is see, we also have dynasties which thrive across the country. It's time that we stopped aping or writing history just from the Delhi center. Delhi is the center of it. So like any Sultanate ruler. See, there were just two
Uh,
Sultanate rulers who were worth even mentioning, and that's what I did in my book. I've named few others also, but only two were worth mentioning. In from 1206 to 1526, to 1526 when Babur comes and defeats Abraham Lodi. So all these 320 years, there were just two rulers with time span of maybe 40 years who were worth mentioning, and they were worth like some sultans. One was Alauddin Khilji and another was Muhammad bin Tughlaq. That's it. Others still, if you read the history, they will start from zero. They will win,
hmm,
get some few victories, and by the end of that regime, the empire will again go back to the same. So they will start, they will go. The resistance was so much, and then this resistance, Hindu resistance, continued till the time Akbar came. Akbar saw this. Akbar was very practical.
hmm,
And there may be contest whether he was great or not, but he was definitely the smartest of the rulers. He was he understood what to do, and he used to change his approach accordingly. So he was not somebody like Aurangzeb. When Aurangzeb saw that he can't win against Marathas, but still he kept on fighting. He and got stuck for 26 years in Deccan. He couldn't come back from Deccan. He died in Deccan. So just after Shivaji died, he thought that
hmm,
he'll
hmm, hmm.
crush Marathas. He couldn't do that. And there's Chhawa movies about that. But look at what Akbar did. Akbar also had a sworn enemy called Mahana Pratap. And he tried crushing Mahana Pratap. He sent Man Singh to do that. Haldi Ghati battle, there is a graphic depiction about that. But within few years he realized that he can't crush him. He has local support. Wheels were with him, and he knew the topography very well. There were very strategically located forts which Maharana of Mewar had made. The main road was Maharana Kumbha. We don't talk about Maharana Kumbha. Maharana Kumbha made out of 84 forts in the region. He made I think 32 or 33 of them. He was one of the greatest heroes. We don't know anything about him. So my point. So then what happened after 3, 4, or maybe 5 years? He cut the chase. He said, "No, let's leave. Let it be." So he realized that it's not worth my spending time on that small region. Let me consolidate another part. And that's why he could strengthen himself. He was not really, he got obsessed with that. And that's why he is smart. He should be read. Uh, but his greatness, I have a question because somebody who kills 40,000 civilians after the victory in Chittor Fort, he killed 40,000 civilians. He
Mm-hmm.
can't be great. And anyway, the idea of putting greatness is for the people, not for the
Right.
historians. I believe that historians should not go into that greatness putting exercise that
Uh-huh.
Ashoka was great, so Shivaji was great. Let's put whatever truth is there. Let people decide it, and let all facts be there. So Akbar, for instance, was the first person to realize and change the track. And then that's why he brought matrimonial alliances with Rajputs, and the empire got really strong. The moment Aurangzeb again turned it around, again went back to the old ways, empire collapsed. By 1707, he was dying. He wrote his will letter to his son saying that he made a mistake, and now empire can't survive. So this is what it is. Now, and when we talk about that, there's just two rulers from Sultanate. There's a couple of rulers from Mughals. Then what about then there must be other rulers, other dynasties which must have done well. And there were others. There were Mewar. You look at the Mewar. Why did Maharana Pratap, for instance, kept on fighting and never surrendered? He even went to jungle and he had no food also to eat at times because he had 1,000 years of history of Mewar, glorious history of Mewars, where he had got the entire warrior ancestors, and he couldn't have not done what he did when he looked back at his own past, family's past. His family has sacrificed so much throughout. So my point is history of Mewar. There is Karkota dynasty in Kashmir. They were fantastic,
And
rulers.
we have no idea about this Karkotas.
No, in fact, there was one ruler of them, who actually excels Erwin Alexander in his military exploits. He goes as far as today's Xinjiang region in China is there,
Hmm.
and is undefeated in his own life. We don't know about him. So there are Ahoms. Ahoms defeated Aurangzeb at the prime of Mughal Empire. Not when after in 77. It was in 1671 when Aurangzeb was at his apex. He was defeated at that time. We don't talk about them. We hardly talk about uh, 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 empire like Vijayanagar. The Vijayanagar gets mentioned, but again as a regional power. Now, what
Right.
is regional power? It's all joke. There's nothing called regional power in Bharat. Uh, just because something in Delhi becomes a mainstream power, even if the
Hmm.
rulers were small, and Vijayanagar or Cholas, they were not. They were mainstream power. They were as mainstream as Mauryas, Mughals, and Guptas were. So I think we need to make, and that's also good for the country's unity and integrity. Why should we
Absolutely.
make Cholas look like that regional power when their achievements were
Hmm.
far greater than any other empire in this country? So I think we need to look from that perspective, and we need to, and that is also good for the country.
Okay. So I would really like this podcast to be, short one wherein people get a glimpse of what all has happened. And I can really see that we getting into another discussion where we talk about, the overall chronology of these empires in India, right? So that would be my request on this podcast that let us do another one where we talk about the, Mughal Empire as in they came and the Indian, all the empires in India that were there at that point of time and their greatness. So I would more like to talk about the greatness of our empires, right?
Okay, yeah.
So let's end this podcast out here because I don't want to give it all away. But before we let you go, Utpalji, I have one very personal question. All these mainstream media journalists like you, the media stalwarts like yourself, do you think that you guys would make the best authors because you have the real hardcore facts with you? You have the rights, the lefts, and the centers, everything you know. So, do you think the authors
No,
make the journalists or the mainstream media people make the best authors?
no, I think we sometimes have the advantage of
Uh,
getting the limelight. It will be easy.
okay.
Like what happened with sons of film stars.
Hmm.
Amitabh sons will get a very good opening. I still remember the film Refugee was his first
Yes,
film,
yes.
and it got opening of lifetime, but then it bombed after that. So we get a very good opening. Ultimately, it's a content and it's a kind of observation. So I believe that today, if you see some of the very good writers we have, they came from the very small towns. They read in some of the very insignificant institutions, colleges, and this thing. And they are today the world's best writers, precisely because they have the stories to tell. So ultimately, it's about what story you tell. We have that advantage. I'm telling you, we have advantage. We know people, so we slightly can push our things around. But that may happen with just one book. Ultimate thing is that how you observe the society, how deep observation is, and how your understanding of society and people or issues is. Ultimately, that's what will take forward. So I think ultimately it's a fair game for all.
Okay. Thank you so much, Utpal ji, and I look forward to hosting you again very, very soon.
I
Thank you so
truly
much.
look forward
I
to
got
it.
to learn so much from you, and this is just, I don't think this is even 1% of what we can, learn from you with a man of such wisdom and,
No, no.
uh,
I think we all learn from each other. And I'm generally I'm serious about that. And I love this photograph. Because this was very spontaneous, and it just weaved. It went about its own. It took its own course, I can say. So I
thank you so
loved
much.
it. So thank you so much for inviting
Thank
me.
you so
Thank
much,
you.
Utpal ji. Thank you.